CFLCA. Unfortunately, Mary could not attend today, so she put the burden on me. I'm very pleased to accept. Before we even get started, I would like to thank several members of the board that have made a tremendous effort to be able to move the meeting from last week to this week. There was an event that we felt as a board was very important for the members of the community to be able to attend. So we decided to postpone the meeting to today. We lost our location, but so be it. So we have signing sheets that are going around. Please sign in. For people that are online, please type in your name and your civic association. So we'll be able to pick that up from the online feed afterwards. So first thing first, let's. So is the I don't know.
Okay, I'll use it. Jim will lead us.
All right, so we're gonna do pledge of allegiance. So we have a petition coming out.
Oh, there.
I would
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
So this is Sergeant White. No police. You're all on the beach having fun. Okie dokie. So that moves us directly to 1B. We have members of 45 Fort Lauderdale that have the pleasure to have us to grace us at this meeting, and they wanted to make a presentation. So I'm transitioning that to them. We have Ms. Patricia here. We also have Deborah Cueva, manager. So please take it away. The floor is yours.
So my name is Dr. Nancy Gaston. I'm the Deputy Director of our Public Works Department here at the city and your Chief Resilience Officer. We've been working with Hazen and Sawyer, starting with Stormwater Master Plan #1. Now that we're initiating the second phase under Fortify Lauderdale, we welcome the work that Hazen's been doing to expand from the 15 neighborhoods that we were covering under the Stormwater Master Plan in the first phase to 25 additional neighborhoods we're looking at under the second phase. Reyes Patrica is our manager of the stormwater engineering team, and he'll introduce the players from Hazen and Sawyer.
Hello, Patrica. Yeah. So 2023, we kicked off the Fortify Lauderdale, which included 17 neighborhoods to do infrastructure improvements. So obviously the big part of it is, you know, taking these neighborhoods, installing pump stations, new drainage, and trying to get the water out of the streets. But another component is private resilience, talking to residents and talking to businesses and what they can do to basically fortify themselves, you know, because the government can do certain things, the city can do certain things to keep the water clean, but it's also up to you guys to utilize the guidelines. And so as part of this meeting is to kind of hear you out and see what your issues are. We're very familiar with most of the issues of flooding, but if there's anything else, and then take this input, and the next meeting will be presenting guidelines or something that you guys can use to fortify your own property from a private standpoint. So we have Hazen and Sawyer, Rob Taylor, and Lucia Mattia that's going to be presenting on the private resilience.
Thanks, Reyes. I can see most of it. Sorry. Find a place with my back, not a couple of folks. But anyway, Rob Taylor with Hazen and Sawyer. Thank you very much for having us out tonight. We certainly appreciate it. As was mentioned, Fortify Lauderdale is a program that the city unveiled just about a year ago. How can we be more resilient as a community? And as Reyes mentioned, that not only encompasses what the city and the government can do in the way of providing better stormwater management and flood resilience infrastructure, but it has to do with how they can pair that with what private property owners, residents, homeowners, business owners can do to make our resilience most effective. So really tonight we're about two things. We want to make sure that those of you that have not already been introduced to the Fortify Lauderdale program get a quick glimpse into what that is and how this idea of private resilience fits into that effort. And then primarily we want to be able to hear from you. So we're going to share with you later a survey that we have that we would love to get you all and colleagues of yours and others who are involved in your neighborhoods provide us their feedback relative to what we can do in this world of private resilience to make the guidance that we provide more effective to all of the residents and businesses for Lauderdale. So again, Fortify Lauderdale kicks off toward the end of 2023 is a program with the goal of improving resilience to impacts of climate change, particularly within the city's most vulnerable neighborhoods and communities. And so in order to provide kind of some foundation as to what we mean when we talk about resilience, we're talking about the ability to prepare for natural hazards, the ability to adapt to changing conditions, and the ability to withstand and, very importantly, recover rapidly from disruptions or impacts. It's not always just about being able to withstand, not incur some type of impact, but how we can recover from that most expeditiously. And so if you go to the city's website, you will see resilience means the city is striving to continually increase its capacity to withstand and recover quickly from climate changes. Involved in this program, there are some significant public investments. The city is in the process right now of completing a citywide vulnerability assessment. The city, as Nancy and Rares mentioned, made a decision to accelerate their stormwater master plan infrastructure investment program. We started out with what's called phase 1 or tranche 1. There were 8 neighborhoods. The expectation was when we moved into the second phase, we would add another 7 neighborhoods. With the occurrences of April of 2023 and other significant storm events that we've had over the time since the master plan program began, the city made a decision to move that forward and to tackle 17 additional neighborhoods. That work is expected to be designed and constructed within the next 10 years. And once that is complete, it'll mean that the 55% or so of the city's most flood-prone areas will have been equipped with improved stormwater infrastructure. In addition to that, there's funding for seawalls, roadways, bridges, other types of infrastructure, heightened resilience regulations, and then an increase in staff and a higher priority placed on the stormwater management program of the city. As it relates to both the first phase projects and the second phase projects, you're welcome anytime to go and check out the city's website. We are posting a monthly progress report there, so you can look and see where things are in the course of design, construction, what other programs might be going on within the world of resilience and stormwater. As it relates to what we're again calling the phase 2 or tranche 2 neighborhoods, we're having neighborhood meetings with each of the 17 neighborhoods. It won't be 17 meetings, if some of them have been aggregated. And we've seen some of you at some of those meetings already. We've had a couple of them that have already taken place. We have 6 others that are currently on the schedule to take place, and we're trying to get 3 more finished up as far as scheduling. And that will be really the first of a series of meetings that we have with each of those neighborhoods. And then this is part of our outreach specific to the private property resilience. Our second such meeting, the first one we had was with city staff who are working with private residents and business owners when it comes to stormwater management and resilience. And we'll also be having a meeting with the business community. Sure. We'll be meeting with the business community and also with the development community to talk about what we can do from their perspectives to help improve community resilience. And as I kind of mentioned at the outset, the reason for this is really that the city can do so much. They can make improvements on public property. They can make improvements in the public right of way. They can certainly have regulations and policies that help guide development and redevelopment in a resilient fashion. But the optimization really of resilience can happen when public and private come together and do what they can both do in order to press this initiative forward. And so what you see on the right-hand side of this slide, the lighter colored green are those phase 1 neighborhoods. And we are nearing substantial completion in several of those neighborhoods, moving forward with construction in the balance of those. The darker green are the 17 new neighborhoods, tranche 2, that we're talking about. One of the things that I think is really important about this private resilience component is that even if you're not in one of those 2 shades of green, there are things that residents and business owners can do to help make their property more resilient. And even if you are in one of those green shaded areas and there are improvements coming to your neighborhood somewhere down the line, if you look at the schedule that's on the other side of the graphic, you'll see that these projects are going to happen over the course of a decade. Some projects will happen at the very front end and some will, have to happen toward the back end. We want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can early on, even before those projects happen, to make ourselves more resilient as a community. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lucia and Angela to talk us through kind of the resilience guidance that we're starting to put together, the survey that you all will respond to, that will help us in making that the best document it can be. So I'm going to hand this off to whichever of you perhaps the hardest.
Hey, y'all. I'm Angela, and I've been helping out with this private resilience guidance development process. So I wanted to give you some insight into what has gone into the development of the guidance and what feedback we're incorporating in order to create guidance that's relevant to all of you here. So the first step for this guidance development is looking at what's already out there, right? Looking at the wealth of resources from federal agencies, from agencies here in Florida and in South Florida. The Miami Beach Rising Above program is one that we're looking at. For example, we've compiled a big database of existing programs that get to private resilience action. So trying not to reinvent the wheel here, but learn from those existing programs. The second aspect is stakeholder outreach and engagement. This is where we're including city staff, home and business owners, as well as the development community in this process before the guidance is developed as part of that process to make sure we're getting all the feedback in before we put a document out. The third piece here is the actual development of the guidance itself, and this will have 2 types of guidance. The first is a document catered to residential folks, and then the second is a commercial focused guidance document. So we'll target each of those private property owners kind of separately in this guidance. And then the last piece is looking into potential for cost sharing grant program recommendations for private property resilience. So how can we encourage folks to take advantage of these private resilience measures and give them the tools they might need to do that. So those are the 4 key steps and components. But again, we're here today to do the outreach and engagement part. So what could this guidance look like? There's a lot of different ideas we have here for how this might take shape. The first piece that came out of our meeting with the city was the importance of defining roles and responsibilities between homeowners and the city. So that's something that we think will be a key part of this guidance. But we might also provide guidance on specific measures you can implement on your property, like what is needed flood elevation or keeping your swale clean or different measures like that. The best practice of obtaining flood insurance as applicable for you, private property, and minimizing impacts to your neighbors, for example. This is just some ideas to get you all thinking about what this might look like, but not trying to be too prescriptive here today in this meeting as we're getting feedback from you all. So The main point of today is giving you an opportunity to provide feedback, and we recognize that we have limited time with you here, so we're really going to leverage this online survey. And we have a piece of paper to pass out, so you can keep this QR code.
Yeah, if you can scan the QR code, this is headed into our, participation, discussion, open discussion, that we've structured here for you all really to chime in and, provide some guidance, as far as the identifying the most important elements of private resiliency and what really can be effective for homeowners. So if you can take out your phone, turn to the cameras, click it, it should pop up. There are a total of 16 questions, but there's about 3 or 4 of them that are really easy. So I'm not, don't get intimidated here about this survey. You can answer any and all to the fullest. You can answer one. This is really for you, a tool to gather your input. If besides the survey you feel like something wasn't covered, please I'll shout out my contact information and we'll gather information in a different way. But really, we want to gather as much as we can while we have everyone here in the room, discussing openly, being candid, and really getting to the meat of what is important for homeowners and private resiliency, and how best we can develop tools to help homeowners. So we're going to kind of prompt the survey questions. You can pretty much answer the first 3 right off the bat, and then we're just going to go into the 4th one here. So you can advance.
And Lucia, it's not, if you don't have to take it right here, right now, right? I mean, you just want to kind of listen in now, that's fine too. You can take it on your phone whenever, so.
Yeah, we can just have an open discussion, and then, you can chime in the high points that really, sounded true to you. This is also shareable. So if somebody isn't in the room, if in your community, maybe key members that could provide some good insight, I invite everyone to share it. And we are collecting responses till the 26th.
Excuse me, can you put the QR code back up there?
And on this slide with the questions, the QR code will be in the same spot at the top. So if you haven't scanned it, it'll be up.
We'll give you one more minute here. Everyone get on it.
It's on the Instagram right now.
It's on our Instagram site right now.
Okay, great. That's the first one.
Okay, so we have kind of 2 groups of questions here, and we can't collect all of your feedback here verbally in person, but we want to get you a sense for what these questions look like on the survey and kind of what we might expect as typical responses. So this first category is responding to hazards as a property owner. The first kind of lines of questioning is trying to understand what you think are the most important hazards you face as a property owner. Is it intense rainfall, high wind, heat, hurricanes, and
Yeah, so the first one is just asking you to rank these. We can give a pretty good guess here, but we want the data. So you could just rank them from high to low, what's the most important and the least important. That'll set the stage for discussion going forward.
And then the next 2 questions are around how you currently respond to different hazards, like climate flooding, wind, and other climate hazards. All the same. Okay. The next question is about what types of actions you take to prepare in advance. So not what you do in a current event, but what are you doing ahead of time, like right now, to prepare for a particular hazard that might come about. And then the last question in this section, and we can go back and if you have thoughts on these series of questions, we can talk about that, is about roles and responsibilities. The first is, what do you feel is the city's role in promoting resilience? And the second is, what do you feel is your role as a property owner in improving resilience?
We can go back and maybe just open for discussion. You know, what are you thinking of? How do you respond to those hazards, whether it's extreme rainfall, flooding? How do you prepare for those hazards? And then the roles and responsibilities question, where do your responsibilities as a homeowner dovetail with the responsibilities as city's responsibilities? So those are kind of the highlights of this section. Somebody wants to start discussion.
I'm JJ Ryder from Rio Vista Civic Association. Our neighborhood has a hurricane preparedness plan that is currently in place. That means that we go down an entire booklet of what we need, what we want to see. We also, after the hurricane, go out, do our primary surveys ourselves, secondary surveys ourselves, and then we relate that to officials. So, you know, try to be self-sufficient within our own neighborhoods. That's from a neighborhood perspective. From a personal perspective, really make sure that you have supplies on hand when the season is. Make sure that your roof is in good condition before the season and clean. Make sure that the trees are properly trimmed. Make sure there's all kinds of garbage laying around your home. That can definitely have an impact. So take personal responsibility. Now, what the city could do better during the last hurricane we had, and that's a number of years ago, it was very, very difficult to obtain from the city information as to where supplies were available, which pharmacies are open, which gas stations were open, which stores had water, which stores had food. That information was very, very hard to come by because it was not a unified way of doing that. So that's where I think the city could do a little bit of a better job communicating after the event.
That's great.
Well, I live in Harbordale, and one of the problems we face is like on our private properties, we have storm projects. We have driveways, for instance, and we clean them every year at an exorbitant cost cleaning them. But what happens is the water from the street is now rushing into our property, and there's no way that our infrastructure can handle more than the amount of water that's on our property. And even then, I'm surprised that it handles what's on our property. And that's a problem because no matter how clean we keep our storm drain, it's not going to help us in terms of mitigating the issues. And we also have situations where we have other private property owners who don't maintain their storm. They don't maintain their swales. They don't maintain their dry wells. And not only does the water from the street collect, but it's the water from their properties they collect. And we have a whole number, because we're an older mixed-use neighborhood, we have a whole number of properties that still use the old-fashioned way of shedding their rainwater. And it's, you know, the gutters empty onto the parking lots, which then empty onto the streets. So there's, you know, a myriad of problems associated with private property. But I think there's got to be a way to compel property owners to take care of their own drainage situation. Because if we can't make everybody, it's like seawalls. If we can't make everybody raise their seawalls, if it's causing a problem on the street, then we're not going to get ahead of this situation. Observation.
I think it was a similar observation when we talked to some of the city staff too, right? That sometimes there's got to be a regulation code in place to compel compliance with certain.
Exactly.
Jim Concanon, Sunrise Internet. To add to what Marilyn just said in terms of the city and people taking care of the property, we have a lot of construction. I think there's construction throughout the city. The contractors are very negligent in terms of the debris that they generate in that construction process. And that debris oftentimes winds up either directly in the storm drain, blocking the storm drain, or going into it. So one house in our neighborhood, and apparently the painters dumped all of their paint into the storm drain. Well, besides the ecological impact to the water, in this case the Middle River, that stuff dries, clogs up the drain. So it would seem to me like the city's responsibility, or perhaps an initiative for code enforcement to be more diligent in monitoring and then enforcing that whole concept, because clearly contractors don't pay attention. We could talk to them, we can tell them, but the only mechanism is to call code. Then the process of that enforcement is very prolonged. It goes to, they get a citation, it goes to the magistrate over a period of time, and they have 30 days to clear it up. By the time we go through that whole process, they could be out of there. The damage is already done. So I think that's something that the city could take a hard look at. This is, it's very prevalent, and there will only be more construction in all of our neighborhoods, either large commercial or residential.
They don't put down prior to hurricanes. They do some of them do a very poor job locking down their work sites prior to the weather event. That means all their equipment is there with things swinging left, right, and center.
I had styrofoam boards all over my property from the trees.
Yeah, well, that's very true. Lots of times it could be plywood, it's not fast down, but that's really comes back not to the homeowner, although the property owner could be notified and take responsibility. If you have a contractor, ultimately the homeowner should be responsible. So there's a couple areas where enforcement, and I mean that in a constructive sense, be implemented for projects.
Ted and Sarah, River Oaks. I see a lot of I've seen a lot of these presentations, and the private resilience. Keep on saying maintaining swales. Let me tell you, with what we have, the swale does not matter. I mean, it'll be overrun in just a matter of time. So the keeping, it's the swales, maintaining the swales in our neighborhood, and I know in Edgewood and Croydon, it's just ridiculous, because that's really not going to do anything. A lot of the thing that we have is these zonings where we have 0 lot lines. I know a person in River Oaks, they have a house in the middle, 2 cluster homes on each side, 0 lot lines. They have to be 6 feet above for the new guidelines for construction. And this house is now sitting down in a soup bowl in between these two that have no way in the world they can maintain the water on their property, even though we have a French drain, we have this. I mean, so the zoning is working against the private resilience because it is just producing more water. It's got to go somewhere, and it's going into the streets. It's going into our houses, which is what happens. So, I mean, we just, it needs to start with a lot of this stuff that we're doing with the zoning as a building in our neighborhood that is just causing, all of this stuff. I know River Oaks, we had creeks, we had 2 preserves. The creek is now Pond Echo Creek apartment complex. The preserve is now La Preserve gated community. The 2 big retention ponds are now taken over by the LMC, the harbor, and drained and built upon. So, we had a system in place that is now gone. And now you're depending on private resilience and keep your swale. I don't know where you live, but that ain't gonna work in River Oaks. I mean, we need to start thinking better outside of the box and not just, with these putting little band-aids on a gunshot.
Looking at policy and
Yeah.
development.
Yeah, I think we understand that there are neighborhoods where some of these things will work and there are neighborhoods where they won't work. I think too, we have to think about the aggregation of sometimes it's a lot of littles that turn into something that's a little more effective. So it's the cumulative impact of a lot of small things that can work together with hopefully some big things. And that's maybe, the city is making a big investment in infrastructure, but if on the private side of things, we can make a lot of small contributions, I think those things can come together again to hopefully give us the best end result.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the value of a swale in terms of managing the typical rain event. A swale's not going to manage a 10-inch rain event, but if you have a typical 1/2 inch, 1 inch rain event, swales are very powerful responsible in keeping the roads passable and keeping you from having that ponding on the roadway. So you shouldn't necessarily be thinking about resilience in the context of the April 23 storm. You should be thinking about resilience as not only those big things, but the everyday events that we experience all the time and the value that the swale have. I live in Hollywood. The only drainage in my neighborhood is swales. My house has never flooded. My neighbors' houses have never flooded, even though we've experienced the same kind of rain events that has happened in the city, because swales can work effectively to help reduce it. So I don't want to underestimate the value of the swale, because even in our big projects, River Oaks and Edgewood, we did a lot of swale enhancements in order to help reduce that volume that's coming into the other parts of the system.
Still had a lot of flooding in June after that with normal rain events. It's come to 20th Street, come to 12th Avenue, come to 15th Avenue, you know, on a regular rain events, and the streets are completely covered.
So I love swales and I think tails are great, but Nancy, you know, Ted raises a very good point. We're raising the level of new construction. You have to build up at a certain height. You can build to the zero stop line. The city's allowing that, whatever the zoning is. But the property owner is supposed to be responsible for all the water that falls on their property, are they not?
No.
Okay, so
No. So they're responsible for certain standard rain event, 3/4 to an inch of rain. What happens a lot with new development is that properties, the next door neighbors were actually donating their stormwater to these properties because they were often a lower portion of the properties. New person comes in, development comes in, they build the new FEMA flood elevation, they raise the property, so you get a double whammy. The water that was on those other properties that was flowing into this property no longer can do that. So they're no longer taking the stormwater from the next door neighbors. And in addition to that, they only have to hold the first part of that, whatever that storm is, on the property. And so after they hold that first inch, and it's a 3-inch rain event, those other 2 inches are going off that property.
or they're going
So-
into the house between.
Or
them.
going in the house between
Yeah.
it. And I've worked in this community for almost 30 years now, and this has been a conversation since I started, is that new development will always raise the elevation, and it will always create a problem with the way that people are used to the water flowing. And that's what floodplain management is about. It's very important. But I agree that it does create problems for the older homes that have been there that are at a different elevation. So no argument there. The question is, what kind of policy can we put in place? How can we change floodplain management as a role of the city in order to address the issues?
Are there any questions from anybody online? Because we have been ignoring them.
Yes, no? Can I follow on with Ted's discussion about zoning? I mean, our zoning ordinance, God bless it, doesn't prioritize open space. As a matter of fact, we continuously cut back on the amount of required open space. Not sometimes we increase it, but for instance, just let me give you a for instance. Our zoning says that if you have an activated pedestrian facade, okay? That's the priority, an activated pedestrian facade. We will let you reduce your side yards, okay? So sometimes we're looking at reducing side yards from like 100 feet to 10 feet, okay? Because we put the priority on this activated pedestrian facade, okay? That's an urban design issue. God bless me, urban design, okay? But that was previously, okay? That was an important, and it's still probably an important element, but I think the flooding and the stormwater and the open space and the ecology is sort of rising up again as being more important as a priority than the activated pedestrian facade. So we should be looking at not only zero lot lines, but we should be looking at the incentives we give developers to build bigger, wider buildings with less open space, which could absorb the water. So to me, that's something that we should really be paying attention to. You go downtown and that last building that's 500 feet right at the edge There is not, that's lot line to lot line. There is not a piece except for a little strip with some, pond. There is no open space there. And there is no ability of that particular property to contribute to the holding of rainwater, and they're only dealing with their own water from their roof. That's all they're dealing with, and the standard that they're dealing with it to is probably not adequate anyway. But we have to look to what are our priorities in our zoning ordinance? Should it be more focused on stormwater retention?
That's good.
Anything on?
We got one here.
Maybe one more and then we'll move on to the next.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just did have a quick question on, just from the downtown perspective, and bringing up the new code and what the requirements are for these new residential buildings to have, this, I was wondering if you could describe what they're required to have as far as kind of this well beneath the building. And I'm curious, how effective that's been. It seems like downtown, except for specifically if, during the extreme rain, general is managing stormwater situation. I guess I just wanted to understand, what is this requirement? And can you just describe what this well is that's below these large high rises?
So most developments, if it's over a single family home, they do have to go through a process of approval from Broward County and City of Fort Lauderdale. But typically, if you look like townhouse developments, that they have to retain their 25-year storm, which is a big storm. It's 17 inches, and you'll see, for instance, in Edgewood and stuff, you'll see they'll put stem walls around the property. They'll burn them up. So those wells, the buildings, and it's not even the roof area. The roof might be like 1 acre. But they do take into account when the rain hits the side of the building, there's more water coming down. So that's substantially even higher than what falls on the property. So drainage wells, if you'll go around, they basically take the water and they put it down under the ground for about like 120 feet. So they do work. They have 200 gallons per minute, usually discharge. It depends where you are. They work very well close to the beach. They don't work as well as you can further to like 95. But they do have to get tested, and they have to do an assurance report when they get permitted, and they actually test the flow that goes into there. You assume 200 gallons, sometimes it's like 500, even more. So it does take. Now, what tends to happen over time, they do decrease in efficiency. Like if they're not maintained and they're not drilled and like cleaned, that 500 gallons might be 125 now. So. But they do need to get recertified every 5 years. So, but the intent is when you see a high rise, they're supposed to retain everything on site. And even though it doesn't look like big drainage, like retention ponds or anything, those drainage wells are calculated to take all the water falls.
So, no, thank you for sure. There's a hand up online. Someone has a question online.
Go ahead. Jerry online.
Hi, it's Susie. Jerry's other half. I got in late. I just have a quick question to ask. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if temporary stormwater management has been brought up as far as with new parks that are being done, like for instance, the Heisinger Park downtown or other parks. Is the building department advising builders to look into if there are, like, for instance, if that is a private job, but is there advice to possibly look at making that a temporary water storage for the flooding, to mitigate flooding downtown? There are different cities that are using those methods. I know that there's a park in New Jersey that holds 2 million gallons. I know in the county, I've spoken to county leaders. They're looking into using parks out in Plantation and Davie for possible. I know Oakland Park is using, they actually have one that they've implemented already, that they put a cistern underneath that brings in close to 500,000 gallons it holds temporarily. And then they're going to reuse that water to actually water to water some of their plants into their landscaping budget. So I just wondered, has that been brought up at all today?
I don't know that, I don't know whether that is planned for Huizenga Park, but that is a practice that we do use pretty significantly, is how parks and other public spaces can be used for their primary function, typically of parks and recreation, but when it's raining, they can be used for stormwater management. So that is a fairly common practice. Some
Is it being implemented here in Fort Lauderdale at all?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Could you just, I don't know where it's being implemented here in Fort Lauderdale. If you could just share that with me.
No, this is Chris Bennett. From a codified perspective, no, there's nothing implemented right now that requires the private property construction projects or even city projects to actually retain anything above and beyond what that private property, which we explained earlier, is a 25-year storm on site. So as they're doing their construction and so forth, they are responsible for installing their own on-site drainage systems, whether temporary or not, in order to handle what's coming down on their site, even while they're under construction. But above and beyond that 25-year storm flowing onto their site, we don't have anything codified right now. What Rob Taylor was mentioning earlier, from a city perspective, we try to implement projects in conjunction with Parks and Recreation to utilize our own city-owned properties to allow for on-site storage, passive parks and field, passive stormwater parks, to where a park can be utilized and flooded without destroying the park in order to handle heavy rain events. But from a general perspective, to the point of your question, no, there's nothing codified or required of any of the private property projects to retain more than what is normally required for their drainage systems, even during construction.
Well, I know in many of these, there's heat islands are being discussed and sponge cities are being discussed. So I was just hoping that when we're discussing Fortify Fort Lauderdale, that some of these ideas will be implemented in the future with their plan.
Yes, and that's certainly, I mean, ultimately the goal of this conversation here today is not only from a single family home property owner perspective, but from a large property owner perspective, what can we all come up with? Your ideas that you just mentioned right now, is everything we're talking about here today, are all to be considered by the team between Hazen and the city staff in order to come up with plans that we can help guide residents, guide property owners, and guide our own master plan in order to implement into our own design guidelines moving forward. So any ideas you come up with, like which we just mentioned here, is definitely going to be considered for sure.
I really appreciate the time that you gave me to speak. Thank you.
And it can't be just any property, because elevation is king. And so you really have to pay attention to the elevation of the property that you're targeting for that type of work, as well as the elevation of the surrounding neighborhood. So
with that, thank you, Dr. Gassman. And with that question, with elevation, there has been mention that with Residents for Resilience, I get a lot of questions on, will the building department start implementing their recommendations to builders to start thinking in the future with what we know is coming, making that bottom level more user-friendly? Are you going to be giving us ideas of how we can retrofit our houses possibly for resilience?
So I think one of the things, again, I mentioned at the outset, one of the conversations that we're yet to have is one like this with the development community. So as development and redevelopment within the city happen, that things like this, opportunities like this, the ability we talked about not prioritizing green space, that we can have a conversation about how that can be prioritized. It doesn't just provide improvement from the standpoint of water management, but the last question mentioned heat islands. We've looked at for Broward County the very significant effect that green space provides over impervious area when it comes to heat. And so those are, I think, things too that hopefully will come out of this discussion with the development community to talk about how there can be a cooperation to achieve some of these things that I think we're all thinking about are good ideas. Now, how do we make them come to a point where they can actually be fruitfully implemented?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Back to the question of, providing, recommendations or, systems that have worked in the past, that is getting built into the guidance that we're talking about today. This is information, this discussion is feeding that document. So, going forward, you'll have.
Why don't we move on to the next segment of questions real quick? I
Yeah.
don't want to monopolize all of the brief time.
So, keep going. Yeah. So the second section, addressing barriers to private resilience. So we have a series of questions.
Yeah, so this section is more focused on what we can do to address resilience, which we kind of already got into a little bit here in our conversation. But the nature of the question starts with what do you feel is needed on your property to be more resilient? We talked about that a bit. What barriers are preventing you from investing in or pursuing resilience measures on your private property? Is it lack of knowledge about what exactly you should do? Is it lack of funding? Things like that. What type of incentives would help you improve resilience of your property? And then what resources do you need to make you more prepared for natural disasters and flooding? Specifically, what would be most helpful? Informational resources, grant incentives, regulations, and code, and we kind of touched on a bit of these as well in this conversation. And then the last question in this section, which again, we'll get this feedback in the survey as well, is what's the best way to reach you with information about resiliency? Is it social media, paper pamphlets, HOA, things, word of mouth? This is important for, actually getting the message out there in a coherent way, which, it's so important. So we have for this section,
Maybe if we want to take a few minutes, if there are any thoughts relative to particularly the ideas of barriers
to implement.
resilience.
The answer to all those questions is money.
That's,
Put that down.
that's what I told him earlier, so that's
We
gonna be,
needed that to document that. Now we do have it documented.
And in the survey, there's a couple ideas of how that would come about. So is it a tax incentive? Is it a grant? Is it, what does that look like?
All of the above.
Yeah, so. Any other thoughts here? Should we?
I'm just curious, you talked about the importance of swales a lot, and what are some suggestions on how to create the best swale now? So what is the best practice on what we should be doing with our swales?
Yes.
I think maybe foremost is what not to do with your swales. So if you're in some neighborhoods don't have much of a swale to begin with, but if you are in a neighborhood that does, Nancy mentioned her neighborhood in Hollywood, and there are a bunch of them around our office in Hollywood that have good swales. It's don't fill them, don't pave over them, don't landscape,
Don't park on them.
And that's part of the understanding and what we want to get at with kind of the poster that's up here is a lot of people don't even understand that swale is a part of public infrastructure. They don't recognize it as a part of the stormwater management system. To them, it's part of their yard because they mow it and take care of it, right? But there's a symbiotic relationship that needs to go on there.
And education, because people ask the questions a lot, so education certainly would something we can incorporate into this process to help people understand the value of those types of kind of hidden infrastructure. Because people will tell you, I have no drainage. Well, no, you have swales. You do have drainage, but it's just not underground infrastructure. It's more natural.
People have easements in their yards for drainage that they're not aware of, that end up having, obstructions placed on them that make, Jim, you had a question.
Well, only that, I think there's a lack of information, definitely, and people don't understand. And when I've talked to people in my neighborhood about it, it's like, well, it's been this way for 20 years, not been a problem. Now it is. And then they think, oh my God, I have to move my trees and I've got to dig a ditch. And it's like, it's really tough, really tough. Residents for a long time, it's all blacktop. So.
And it's different. I mean, the mention of development and how development has happened, what might have worked okay when the city was developed to a different level and extent won't work as the build out of the city continues forward. And so we've got to think about those things.
And are there codes about how a swale is supposed to be handled? Is there permitting required? I mean, how is?
Yeah.
Yes.
There is permitting, there is codes. One of the biggest challenges for the city is that people will modify the right of way, which is what the swale is, without a permit. And then once it's discovered, there's a reluctance to make them put it back to its function. So enforcement's been challenging, I will say politically, in order to get neighborhoods back to the way that they were designed so that they had the kind of drainage that was intended. But it's once someone has modified swale without a permit, it's very challenging to go back to, hey, you've now eliminated the ability of this location to drain. And the city will, you can request the city to come in and rehabilitate your swale. There's a program called Save Our Swales. And again, that's something that we can recommend. There be more education on that.
I think that needs to be advertised more.
Lucia, we're back here and then to Ted.
Money is allocated in the CIP for the Save Our Swales program.
It's an operational cost, not a CIP.
How much money in the operating budget?
I could not give you an absolute number because it's not specifically allocated, but it is part. We have a dedicated program, a dedicated funding for swale rehabilitation in general. And so the Save Our Swales piece, because it's a request, and we haven't had a lot of requests for the program, it's probably a relatively small portion of that.
Maybe we should be talking about expanding that and making it a specific program.
So I think one of the things, and then you see it back here, and then, you know, I think you mentioned in one of the programs, so that might be something that.
Insurers and stuff. Like while we're talking about physical resiliency, I'm also thinking about financial resiliency. And if your property tax or your insurance is going up $1,000, $2,000 every year into perpetuity, like none of us are gonna be able to live here. So that's my question is like, are you guys bringing in the people who are insuring our properties to also be part of the conversation of what they want to see in our properties so that we can get our rates down?
Well, the city has a CRS program, and based upon certain things that the city does, they're able to improve their score and lower the insurance premiums for residents. From the perspective of bringing, you know, insurers and talking about actuarials and things like that, we aren't. We know from that CRS guidance document what it is they prioritize and what they value and want you to do in order to make your property more resilient. So we kind of have we've got a book, we got a Bible to follow relative to that.
And everything that we're working on up until now, the first tranche or phase, if you will, of the master plan, which has been 6+ years now, raising the seawall elevation requirements in the ordinance, having more strict requirements on private property development, drainage requirements, our own design standards being raised from a 5-year storm to a 10-year storm for roadway flooding protection perspective, implementing hundreds of millions of dollars in stormwater master plan projects. I personally, and some of us in this room, have had experience in this in other municipalities, and implementing the programs that we've done takes time, but we've been successful in improving those CRS scores from anywhere from 1 to 2 points, which can be anywhere from 25 to plus 30–50% in flood insurance cost reduction. So everything we're doing, our goal is to protect the city, but ultimately there's a side effect, which is to also help improve that CRS score. So we will work with some of the insurance agencies, but ultimately it's more conversational basis. What are we doing? This is what we're doing. These private educational programs, potentially grant programs, whatever might come out of this, will help intensify our ability to convince agencies that give us our CRS score to give us a better score.
So thank you.
Is there any thought about all the AstroTurf that's now going into residential yards, which has no absorption rate whatsoever? Is there any thought of maybe changing the zoning on that?
So the landscape ordinance, we've been working on changing the landscape ordinance for the last number of years and working with an ad hoc advisory group. And we could not come to an agreement of what the new landscape code should look like. So we moved forward with the tree preservation code, which just got adopted. And now the city will continue to work with this group on the landscape ordinance, which includes language related to astroturf.
Yeah,
Okay,
AstroTurf definitely is not pervious.
one last question, okay, because we gotta move on. Go ahead.
I had a question about private, about aging infrastructure and pipes. Is there any incentives or financial help for, like the main water line or the backflow, et cetera, private property? These private property condos that it's super expensive, aging pipes, et cetera. What is done or anything?
I think you're asking a question, but you're really making a recommendation that we look at incentives to improve aging infrastructure that's on private property.
And some of the programs that we've looked at and worked on with other municipal commercial or multifamily residential property to make improvements to their water management infrastructure. So that is one of the elements that we're looking at and reviewing relative to this guidance.
Thank you so much for this very educational. I think we really learned a lot from this, and hopefully it's gonna make a change in the future.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, so we have a lot of council business, kind of important council business that we need to attend to. Number one, we have 2 vacant board positions that we need to work on. Let's take them a little bit out of order. As far as District 3, we have Frankie Lane that said he would be interested in a competition.
Fall back, Frankie.
Any nomination from the floor as far as District 3?
I'd like to make a nomination representing Rock Island homeowners. Can we have Great Williams nominate Mr. Lane for District 3?
Yep, okay. Well, no other person, so let's put it to a vote. It's gonna be easy. All in favor? Okay. Congratulations, welcome, sir. Okay. Now I get to do something. Yeah.
You take a seat at the table.
See, here. Next issue is the recording secretary position has been open now for a while. Is there anybody that has any interest in taking on that position? Now, some of this, we have technology that is assisting us, which has made the job significantly easier from what it has been before. But still, we do need somebody to fill that position. Is there anybody that has expressed any interest in that? Nobody in the room, anybody online? Hold on, somebody's waving a hand. Dennis, are you interested?
No, but anybody that's nominated has to be the representative or the alternate.
Pardon?
You have to be the representative or the alternate of your association to serve on the board.
That's correct.
That's correct, but we still have nobody that has expressed interest either way. So this is something I think moving forward, every single general meeting, we're gonna be bringing that up until somebody says yes. Yes, sir.
So, we have this technology that captures the recording of the meeting, correct? So what happens then to that recording? Would we use AI or something to print it out?
And then AI summarizes the transcript.
Right.
And we've got both the full transcript and a summarization of the transcript.
So what's the next step after that then?
Posting it.
So what is the job if we have an electronic technology that can do this? What does the secretary first need to do?
Make sure that the AI is not changing things like when you use your iPhone. Sometimes you get messages that are not exactly what you intended them to say. So we want to make sure that that does not happen with meetings.
And be responsible for getting the recording to Jim
So
or
it can be
whoever is posting the, somebody has to be responsible for it. You
It's
can't
not a
just
big,
do it, somebody's gotta be responsible.
But it's not writing.
no,
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 no writing,
no,
no.
no.
Edit AI, even the one that's prepared.
Not voluntary.
Okay.
Just asking first. The job is much easier than what it used to be, but it's still a job.
And it's a board position.
And it's a board position.
Yeah.
Yes. So, please put out the message to all other members that have not attended, and maybe somebody that is online or in the room will express interest moving forward. So we're gonna leave that position open for right now. That brings us to the next order of business. We needed a nominating committee, and we needed to approve it by the next meeting. The nominating committee members that we currently have is Dennis Ulmer, who's going to be the chair and District 3 representative, Marilyn, who is the past president, and we have Karen, District 1, Don Burns, District 2, and Estelle Brennan for District 4. So that are the members that we propose for the nominating committee, and we need to put this to a vote. So to see if there is any objection by anybody.
I'll move that those individuals that you just mentioned
I'll second.
are up in the nomination.
And we have a second.
Have a second.
So we have a motion, so we can put it to a vote unless there's discussion. Is there any discussion on the floor? I don't see any hands going up online. Okay, so all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Don't see anybody opposed. Okay, so thank you very much. We have those members for the nominating committee. That brings us to some more fun stuff. So December 9th, we're gonna have the holiday party, and it's also gonna be together with the meeting, and that's and people liked it a lot, so we decided to do that over again. Number 2 important announcement is that House Bill 1365, which is this the public camping and sleeping ordinance, is coming to a town hall meeting on November 21st at 6 p.m. at United Way of Broward County, which is on 1300 South Andrews. So if you have interest to attend, please do so. I think it's going to be quite interesting to see how the city and the county addresses that House bill, because if the writing is on the wall, we're gonna need to do something about it. So that's gonna be the first town hall meeting regarding that. Next item of business is the 2025 meeting dates have been set. They are, I believe, online already, so you can go to them. Not yet?
I'll do it before the year starts.
Okay.
So as not to confuse people.
So the dates have been set. We have looked to make sure that it doesn't conflict with anything, but as we found out last Tuesday, sometimes there are conflicts that occur at the last minute, and we'll address that as it happens. We also found a new home for the next year for the general meetings. It's gonna be in 101 building on the 11th floor conference room, which is close to where the old city hall used to be. You will still be able to park in that parking lot and just walk down the streets, go up to the 11th floor conference room. So yeah, we're gonna be able to have our in-person meetings again moving forward.
City Hall parking lot.
Excuse me?
City Hall parking.
City Hall parking lot, the same parking lot where we used to park before.
Great.
Absolutely.
Free after 4 p.m.
And do we have a membership update?
That's all
Everything
that we just pointed out. It's all on the website, and I've sent out flyers and information in constant contact. Probably you're annoyed getting a lot of those, but I want to make sure that everybody gets it and then gets it again. So if you see a lot of this posted on the website, please, I encourage all of you to take a look at that.
So membership updates.
I can take that. So yeah, just the membership update is that we are at 47 members, neighborhood associations that are paid members. We also have 3 non-voting business members, and the membership the voting membership is through March 31st, 2025, and then our new membership year will start. So if anyone does want to be a voting member, a neighborhood that's not currently a member, I think we have about 12 to 15 that still have the opportunity to become voting members this year. You can definitely sign up on the website, and that is the membership.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the next point. I think I'm gonna repeat it again. For those that are online, please put your names and your civic association in the chat box so we can capture that. And should we do the full roll call? Probably. We have to sign each. So we should be good. Everybody sign. There we go. Okay, so that's good. Next thing is, let's go to the treasurer's report.
Okay, so treasurer's report as of today, November 18. In our Truist Primary Business Checking account, we're now at $5,097.78. The accounts for PayPal account is at $952 rounding, for a total in all accounts of $6,050 with rounding. Our balance, when I spoke to you last on October 8th, was just slightly above that, $6,220. The difference is the purchase of a $170 AI voice recorder for minutes. And so that check was cashed. And I already gave the membership update, so I'll take any comments or questions. Yes, sir.
What was our expense for the candidate form?
Oh, I do have a complete breakdown of that, and it was actually, I think, in the treasurer's report a month ago. So
On the website.
and it's, yeah, but to be honest, I don't have it off the top of my head.
Obviously, I don't have it, so. Well, I can tell you, the question is, what did we spend on the candidate forum? Answer the question. We did not have to pay for the room. Don't pay it that. Michael, you probably have a good understanding because you put it in your guy.
It was basically a really, it's a wash in and out.
Sponsors.
Sponsors took care of it.
Sponsors paid.
Yeah, thank you very much for everybody who put sponsors in. Yeah,
Thank you, Vanessa.
that's all right.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and I can send you an exact amount.
At the minutes from the October 8th meeting. They are online. I would like to have a motion to approve the minutes from October 8th. A motion. Okay, any concerns about the minutes? I don't see any. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nobody? Okay, so the minutes of last meeting are approved and they are already posted on the website. Any old business that we need to discuss today? I don't think so. That brings us for the good of the community. Anything that's going to raise today? No? Okay, so motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you very much,
Nice.
everybody, and
I had fun.
we can go home.